November 5th, 2016, Saturday of the 31st week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Philippians. Brothers and sisters, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that now, at last, you revived your concern for me. You were, of course, concerned about me, but lacked an opportunity. Not that I say this because of need, for I have learned, in whatever situation I find myself, to be self-sufficient. I know indeed how to live in humble circumstances. I know also how to live with abundance. In every circumstance and in all things, I have learned the secret of being well-fed and of going hungry, of living in abundance and of being in need. I have the strength for everything through Him who empowers me. Still, it was kind of you to share in my distress. You Philippians indeed know that at the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, not a single church shared with me in an account of giving and receiving, except you alone. For even when I was at Thessalonica, you sent me something for my needs, not only once, but more than once. It is not that I am eager for the gift. Rather, I am eager for the profit that accrues to your account. I have received full payment, and I abound. I am very well supplied because of what I received from you through Epaphroditus, a fragrant aroma, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. My God will fully supply whatever you need, in accord with His glorious riches in Christ Jesus. The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, Blessed the man who fears the Lord. Blessed the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in His commands. His posterity shall be mighty upon the earth, the upright generation shall be blessed. Blessed the man who fears the Lord. Well for the man who is gracious and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. He shall never be moved. The just one shall be in everlasting remembrance. Blessed the man who fears the Lord. His heart is steadfast, he shall not fear. Lavishly he gives to the poor. His generosity shall endure forever. His horn shall be exalted in glory. Blessed the man who fears the Lord.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to His disciples, I tell you, make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth, so that when it fails, you may be welcome into eternal dwellings. The person who is trustworthy in very small matters is also trustworthy in great ones, and the person who is dishonest in very small matters is also dishonest in great ones. If, therefore, you are not trustworthy with dishonest wealth, who will trust you with true wealth? If you are not trustworthy with what belongs to another, who will give you what is yours? No servant can serve two masters. He will either hate one and love the other, or be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all these things and sneered at Him. And He said to them, You justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts. For what is of human esteem is an abomination in the sight of God. The Gospel of the Lord.
November 5th, Saturday of the 31st week in Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from Philippians 4:10-19. Paul speaks about the fact that the Philippians have sent him some money to help him in his need. Remember, he's in prison, and this was a type of house arrest, and he was expected to provide for his own food, his own clothing, his own shelter, and also for the guard who was keeping watch over him. The Philippians have sent him some money, and he's appreciative for what they've done. Now, he's always very cautious about money because he seems to be afraid of being accused of robbing people of their riches. That was a just fear because at the time of Paul, there were sophists who worked in the marketplace, and who made philosophical arguments for the best pay. If you paid them enough, they would argue the world's flat. On the next day, if you paid them enough, they'll argue that the world's round. So he doesn't want to be accused of being a sophist. Remember, in fact, he preached the gospel right alongside these sophists in the marketplace. And so he's very cautious about money. But he does accept money from the Philippians. And in fact, he says they sent him money while he was in Thessalonica. Now, that's very interesting because in the letter to the Thessalonians, Paul says that he worked night and day so as not to be a burden on them, never mentioning the fact that he was getting some money from the Philippians. Again, this is an example of that reticence to talk about money. Paul also says that he's learned how to live with riches, he's learned how to live with very little. That whatever comes, he's grateful to God. And isn't that a great example of relativity? That he knows that whatever he has, whether it be a lot or a little, is a gift from God, and he's ready to thank God. And finally, he expresses the fact that what the Philippians have sent is a fragrant aroma. That by this sacrifice that they've made of material riches, they've offered up a sacrifice to the Lord. Because it wasn't so much Paul that they were serving, it was the Lord. A lot of people, when it comes time for the weekly collection at church, feel as if the church is robbing them of something, instead of having that attitude that God has blessed them with what they have, and they should be willing to share it. Now, at the same time, the church should be very careful not to keep all of their riches to themselves, but rather to use what they have in excess to help those who don't have enough. The Gospel is from Luke 16, 9-15. It speaks about the fact that we should make friends with our dishonest wealth. Yesterday we heard about the parable of the dishonest steward who knew how to write off some of the master's debts so that he would make friends with other people. We have to use those things that we've received in order to live in a heavenly way. So even if we've been blessed with riches, the riches have been given not for us, but to share with others. And Jesus says you can't serve two masters. You'll love one and hate the other. If we live for money, then that will be our God. If we live for God and money is secondary, then that will be obvious too. And at the end of the passage, we hear that the Pharisees don't like this because they like money. Now, this is an accusation that's not always fair because we know that there were many Pharisees who were good and honest people. But they did oppose Jesus, and Jesus accuses them of hypocrisy. They're only living in order to get wealth and prestige from others. And because of that, they're an abomination before God. And may God bless us.